It's been a minute, like a long minute. Since
like a month minute.
Yeah. Who knew that the month after graduation was going to be more busy?
Yeah.
Between the two of us.
Seriously.
And you weren't in school, but I was. Okay, so that means that we have a lot to talk about, and we've kind of boiled it down to the highlights.
We have very, very, very,
boiled.
very much picked and chosen.
Yeah, which
just
means
the very big stuff.
Which means we will miss some things, especially some of the like breaking news that's happening this week. We're gonna try and cover a lot of it, but we may not get there, so bear with us. All right, let's start with the pop.
Okay, so I kind of chose the most interesting things of pop culture news from the past month. One of the biggest things, and we'll start with this, is the Obama's Netflix deal.
Yeah.
So Netflix signed Barack and Michelle Obama to produce a bunch of things for them. And in the press release it said it could include anything from like scripted dramas to documentaries, just like a whole range of things. And they're going to like produce all these shows for Netflix. Right. And everyone was like, huh, that's a very interesting like post-presidency thing to do. I guess it shows like the modern era that we live in. Like Netflix is definitely like a modern thing. And Barack Obama in his campaigns was like very keen to like use Twitter and social media. Right. So he's like he's up to date with modern things, and so it doesn't like surprise me. It's an interesting move for a presidency, and I'm sure it's got a big paycheck.
It's so wide open that like it'll be interesting to see what kind of content they choose to produce, because I think that that's really where you can get into making some like political statements without meaning to, and if he's trying to stay away from that, you know, it'll be interesting to see what kind of content they produce. But it's probably, you know, all gonna be wonderful, and you're gonna have a whole cult following who still...
There was a small section of the internet that was like, I'm leaving Netflix now.
Are you for real?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not surprised,
but,
actually.
You know, that would have happened with any political person.
Yeah,
so.
That's true.
Just shows the divisiveness of today's political climate in the country is that, you know, we can't... I mean,
small sidebar off of that. I was listening. I just recently read a book called Political Tribes, and then I was listening to a podcast, and both of these sources made the point that like in America, our political identity, our political party, and our political leanings have become our identity, and so like that's become the identity part lines in America, and to some extent. I mean, there are other identity lines, obviously, but because we don't have like culture in the way that most countries have culture, we kind of have like separated ourselves out by these party lines that are arbitrary. But that means that like you become, because like anytime anyone brings up an argument or an idea that contradicts your political leanings, you feel personally attacked. And so that's a lot of it, is that like we're not just discussing ideas, we're talking identities. Anyway, so that was just an interesting idea. Yeah,
that's a very good point.
It's really fascinating. You have other like cultures where it's based on family, tribe, or you know, lineage or whatever, and we just don't have that because we're such a melting pot, and so identity has become political tribes, which is fascinating. Anyway, all right, back on.
All right, moving on. The next item was a very interesting thing, and it was interesting to see how the internet and like people reacted. So Roseanne Barr is, or I should say was, the star of the revamped TV show Roseanne, which was an old TV show that ABC redid, you know, because everybody's redoing everything these days. But she went on this like long racist rant on Twitter.
Like incredibly racist, like calling a former Obama staffer some really terrible things.
Yeah, so she, like, went on this racist Twitter rant, and, like, within hours, ABC announced that they were canceling her show.
Right.
Like, it was swift, and it was hard, and everyone was like, dude, what are you doing? Like, so Roseanne claimed that she was on Ambien.
And that was why.
Which is, like, a sleep medicine that helps you sleep.
It's an anxiety medication.
And it helps you sleep, and she claimed that's what made her racist, but...
It does make you do some crazy things. I had a roommate who was on Ambien at one point, and, like, I was, like, keeping an eye open all night for her. Okay. It does make you do some crazy things, but Ambien, the creators of Ambien, sent this amazing clapback tweet.
I'm not gonna know it word for word. I'm paraphrasing here. basically the makers of Ambien said, although, like, side effects may include blah, 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 racism is not one of them.
Not a known side effect.
And it was like, bam!
Well, and the thing is that this brought up, like, this whole debate brought up, like, Roseanne has said some really terrible things in the past.
First time
like,
she
sexist and racist and,
before.
like, all sorts of
her
stuff.
Twitter feed is...
Well, and this was before they renewed her show, too. And her show also had these overtones of, like, being slightly, like, Islamophobic and racist and, like, all this stuff. And so everybody's like, KABC, you did a good thing by canceling this, but also you knew before you signed her. You must have known. So there's that whole idea there. But yeah, the internet was up in arms for a minute there. Well, it's always up in arms about something.
Always about something. But I think the saddest thing with that is, like, the writers and, like, everybody else who worked on the show is, like, now out of a job. Because of her stupid comments. So, I mean, it was nice. It was good to see that, like, ABC took a stand, because if you didn't know, like, Roseanne was their ratings, like, cash cow right now.
Yeah,
like,
it was doing
it's their
really
number one
well.
show. It was, like, the star of their fall lineup. Like, they were really going, like, they were doubling down on Roseanne.
Yeah.
And so the fact that they, like, had the courage to, like, see past the money and the popularity and shut down her show was, like, really cool to see.
Yeah.
But you also have to feel for, like, the cast and crew who, like, no fault of their own, their show's canceled.
Right. Like, they can't. They're out of a job now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and it's one they were counting
we wish them
on.
well. Okay, next up. This was also interesting. So in the era of Me Too and, you know, this new female empowerment and, like, just this culture that we've lived in post-Weinstein, the Miss America pageant came out, I think it was this week, and said
late last week or
that they are ending the swimsuit portion of the competition, which is, like, huge, because like, that was a big part of of Miss America. And granted, they called it quote unquote the fitness portion, so it was to assess the quote unquote contestants' fitness, and we were all like, yeah, sure. Like, so we all knew that was just a stupid cover. But actually recently at the Miss America organization, they, like, kicked out a bunch of their staff and, like, brought in a whole new people. They actually went through, like, this mini scandal a couple months ago where the, like, leadership of the organization was, like, caught saying really mean things about past Miss America winners. So they basically just gutted the organization leadership and brought in new ones, and this is, like, their first big thing is they're revamping the competition. And, like, everywhere, everyone's applauding this move. I don't know anyone that's, like, sad about it. Several former Miss Americas have come forward and said, like, yeah, I hated that part. That was my least favorite part. Like, this is good.
Yeah, there's also some people that are kind of, like... Yeah, there are a lot of people applauding this as an end to that, but also saying, like, this is still a very superficial contest.
Right.
So, yeah, but nobody's, like, sad to see the swimsuit portion go. So, yeah. All right, next thing.
Star Wars.
Okay, so, yeah, there are a couple of things that happened. So, they released Solo earlier this month, which is obviously the Han Solo spin-off film. It's not, like, doing amazing in the box office, but it's hanging in there for being a Memorial Weekend opener. And it's got an intriguing storyline. I really enjoyed it. I've seen it twice now. I thought that it was fun, and it really is like a space western. And it's
really,
yeah, in some ways, but also it's got this lovable Han who, like, literally Han is at his best when he's messing everything up and doing things terribly, and that is the Han we know. And so you still have, like, that cocky, like, Han that we know in A New Hope, that comes in A New Hope, but he's also, like, he's a 10 years younger Han, and so it's kind of just fun, and, like, you kind of get to see his dynamic with childhood friends, and, like, getting involved in this life of a smuggler, and meeting Lando, and getting, figuring out, like, this is when he meets the Millennium Falcon, and it's just, like, it's just fun. You also get something that Star Wars fans for a long time have been talking about is the Kessel Run, which is, like, this big thing that we always hear about. Like, Han Solo made the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs, but, like, everybody's like, I don't know what that is. Like, is a parsec a unit of distance or a unit of time? Like, all of this stuff. So it turns out the parsec is a unit of distance, and they're just so you kind of get to see that. That's part of this movie, and it's just really, I thought it was a really fun movie. I know that some others had mixed reviews. It's not doing as well at the box office as like the other standalone film, which was Rogue One, and a lot of that is because they didn't market it quite as well, and they moved the release time. So we're now used to Star Wars movies being released in December, because the last 3 have been released in Decembers, and they moved this one to May, and they didn't focus really a lot on marketing for the movie. They were also trying to market Infinity War at the same time, because that came out a month before, and that one was a bigger film and had more name recognition. But I think it's holding its own a little bit. It won't break any records, but it is doing pretty well for itself, and it's just a fun one, I thought. So,
do you think? So I have a friend first who is a huge Star Wars fan, but he specifically has not gone and seen Solo, to show Disney executives like that he doesn't want more movies like this. Like, he's using the power of the purse, right? And I texted him like, hey, I heard Solo's not doing so well at the box office. Your plan is working. And he was like, excellent.
Yeah.
But this brings up a wider question. Do you think fans are getting fatigued?
I think that so the thing that is bothering me a little bit is that there is so much content coming out, like so much.
Because how many?
Like they've got 2 TV shows coming up.
What else is there?
Like there's a live action TV show, and then there's an anime style TV show that are coming out in the next 2 years or so. One's by Jon Favreau, and another one is being headed by someone else. And I think Rian Johnson has a whole other trilogy, right?
Are there 2 other trilogies? Because the Game of Thrones people are also doing, like, a trilogy, aren't they?
Oh, that's right. No, I can't remember if they're doing a trilogy or a TV show.
Or
like, that's what
movies.
I'm saying. I can't keep it all straight. So, there's that, and then you've got 9, and then, so Alden Ehrenreich, who is playing Han, the possibility, and a couple of the other solo actors, there's a possibility for at least a trilogy. Like, in his contract, there's a possibility for a trilogy for Han Solo, and they left so many, like, tails hanging out everywhere in Solo that you're like, okay, that could become its own movie, and that character could have their own movie, and that character, and you're like, okay, but at some point we need to not, like, this needs to not be a thing. So I do think that you really will get fatigue. Right now we know that there are 2 movies in pre-production at Lucasfilm, and the rumors are one is an Obi-Wan film and one is a Boba Fett film. And, like, I mean, there's just so much coming out that, like, yeah, at some point you will get fatigue, and you will get to the point where, like, why are we doing this? But I haven't yet met a Star Wars film that I haven't, like, I've hated, right? Like, even Solo, well, it's not my favorite, it's still, like, a good time. Yeah.
Okay.
The only reason I've seen it twice, though, is because I had to take my brother the second time. I wanted to go with him and see him experience it for the first time. So, like, I wouldn't have gone and seen it again in theaters if that hadn't been my impetus, my motivation to go see it. But it's an okay movie. And so I think that like, at some point, we are going to get tired. But right now, I think that, like... Yeah. I listen to a couple Star Wars podcasts because I'm that kind of geek, and it's interesting to me that, like, they are also still jazzed about literally everything coming out of the franchise, which you think that these people who have immersed themselves in, like, in all of the, like, books and the TV shows and the movies, like, at some point there's gotta be, like, that's it, like, I'm done. But
yeah. You know, and this very question can be extended to all franchises. Yeah. Like, Jurassic World has another coming out this summer, and I'm like...
And how many more Marvel movies do we need,
And Marvel is a very good question. I mean, that's... Going back to Jurassic World, I mean, I've seen the previews, and it's like, okay, you know the dinosaurs are gonna escape, and it's like half the movie CGI. Like, it just...
It's like,
I don't need that. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, Chris Pratt, Bryce Dallas Howard, they're such good actors. I feel like their talents are wasted on, like, a big, like, splashy CGI
and this
sequel.
Comes back, yeah, and this comes back to,
like, give them an original work that they can really shine.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, Jurassic World is never going to win an Oscar. Like, it's never gonna, you know what I mean? Those movies
Right,
just
and
don't
this comes back to the argument
win
and
awards
conversation
and
that
things.
we've had a lot of times that, like, why are we not coming up with original stories? Why are we going to old things that we've seen before?
Right.
And Star Wars is a little bit, like, bridging the gap a little bit there, where they're trying to expand in the same universe. But at the same time, it's the same universe. And so there's, like one of the new TV shows is supposed to take place right before... I think it's right after 6. It's either right after 6 or right before 8. I can't remember. Or 7. I can't remember which one it is. But, like, can we explore some new stories and some new ideas and some new characters and that kind of thing?
That reminds me, I just read an interview from Brad Bird. He's at Pixar. He, like, did Incredibles and some other things. He also did The Iron Giant, which I didn't know. But he says he's not going to do more sequels. Specifically, he said people have been asking for a sequel to Ratatouille and Iron Giant.
Ratatouille doesn't need
and
a sequel.
that's what I said. Ratatouille wasn't that great. It didn't
it
warrant
was like
a sequel.
A sweet story, but like
yeah,
you closed all the loops.
Yeah, and that's what he said. He's like, that story's been told. Like, I don't need to do a sequel. And he said he wasn't going to do an Iron Giant sequel. And I was like, thank you. Like, thank you. Do some... Because everything, I swear, everything coming out of Disney these days, like the Disney umbrella, you know, Marvel, Star Wars, Pixar, all of it, it's just all sequels and remakes. All of it. Like, they don't have
They drop
any
a couple of new ones, but they don't market them
they
the
don't
same.
push them.
No. They don't do a really good job marketing them. And so then you miss them. And then it's really sad because then they're like, oh, we didn't make a lot of money on this new original project, so no more of those. Let's go back to what makes us money, and that's the franchises. And then you're like, but I didn't even know this was a thing. I would have gone and seen it if I knew it was a thing.
Yeah.
Right. So... Anyway, okay.
Like, Coco is a good example.
I know, that
Coco
was a good one.
Brilliant, and it was original, and it was fresh and new, and
it still makes people cry.
And it's amazing. Frozen was another good example of like a fresh new story.
Let's not make a sequel of that one.
They are though.
I know.
Spoiler alert. But and that's the reason that makes me mad about that one is they're only doing it for the money. They're only making a Frozen sequel because Frozen 1 did so well. They weren't planning on doing a sequel, so it's like, you know they're only doing it for the money. You know that kids and moms and families are going to swarm to that movie like bees to honey. Like, you know they're only doing it for the money, and that's what makes me mad, because oftentimes the creative process gets stymied in the rush to make a sequel.
You're right.
I could go on
One more thing on the Star Wars topic. So it came out earlier this week that Kelly Marie Tran, who plays Rose Tico in The Last Jedi, had deleted all of her Instagram posts, and that's like the only social media she's really on, because she's been attacked by a lot of people who didn't like the character of Rose. And by people, I'm mostly, it sounds like it's a lot of like angry white males. And
Can I ask a question here?
Yeah.
So I've seen a lot of people online were like, way to go, Star Wars fandom, like, you're the worst. Is the Star Wars fandom, like, vicious and vile? Like, I'm not part of the Star Wars fandom. Everyone online was like, Star Wars fandom is the worst.
There's a corner of every fandom that is kind of a terrible place to be, and you don't want to be there. And in this case, it's happened to a couple of the female actors. So it also happened to Daisy Ridley.
Why? I thought everybody loved Rey.
I don't know, but like, when it comes to Kelly Marie Tran, they were attacking the character of Rose, who they didn't like, and while Rose isn't necessarily like my favorite character, she's still like, I thought she was a really excellent addition to the franchise, and so it's just like, the other thing is like, if you don't care for the character, why take it out on the actor? Because the actor didn't write the part; they just played the part. So like. Anyway, so she, and really, Kelly Marie Tran is one of the sweetest people on the internet. Like, she's always all about, like, personal affirmation, especially, like, when it comes to, like, she's always pretty open about the fact that, like, when I'm not at work or going to an event, I look like I'm wearing, like, a big oversized hoodie and leggings and, you know, like, no makeup and my hair's up in a messy bun or whatever. So she's really just super sweet and really affirming to people out there who just, like, you know, she's one of those people that, like, when she was given this contract, she did not have very much to her name, and she didn't have a big role, and so this brought her to prominence. And so it's just been really, like, rough to see that, like, people who love like, for those of us who really love Star Wars, and just even though we don't like certain things about it, like, we still love the whole franchise. It's hard to see, like, a lot of these actors who are just really wonderful people and who have nothing, like, they're just being attacked. And there's nothing that we can do about it except for affirm these actors and really tell them that, like, even if we don't appreciate that character, we really like them and love what they're doing for the universe. It's also, like, it's also hard just because she's an Asian American woman, and she's the first Asian American woman to play a major role in Star Wars, and so she's breaking barriers, and that's always going to be hard.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, one last thing on the Disney note. John Lasseter, who is like the animation titan at Disney, is leaving his role because of, what's the word? I want to get it right. Oh shoot, where is it? Because of missteps in his workplace behavior that left some staff members feeling disrespected or uncomfortable. And this is, of course, in the wake of Me Too and Time's Up and the whole Harvey Weinstein momentum.
Yeah.
And this is a big deal for Disney because, like, he is the co-founder of Pixar. He's been there from the beginning and has pretty much shepherded everything that has come through Pixar. Also, he was big at Disney Animation. He was, like, one of the big forces behind Frozen. Like, he is a big deal at Disney, and so this is huge that he's leaving. It's interesting. It says, so he has taken a leave of absence since, like, in November. He took a 6-month sabbatical last November, and then it says he would take a consulting role at the company until the end of the year, and then he'll leave permanently. So they're, like, phasing him out, but it's interesting that, like, he is the big man at Disney for, like, their animated movies.
It'll be interesting to see if that changes things in any way.
Yeah. So that was a big, if you know Disney and that circle, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, that ends our pop culture section.
Side note.
Oh.
Also, the royal wedding happened while
That's
we were
right.
on our little break.
It was wonderful.
It was really quite beautiful to watch, and I really loved Megan's dress, like, a lot. And her
That's
veil
nice.
was really cool.
Yeah.
Like, that thing was so long, but what was really cool about it is that it had the flowers of each of the Commonwealth countries embroidered on it.
Yeah,
so it was really pretty. And it was a very, like, cross-cultural ceremony.
Oh yeah, we could do a whole podcast on, like, the royal wedding. Oh, I listened to them. Yes.
Oh yeah. Okay, yeah.
There are, because I listened to them.
I listened to the Star Wars ones. You listened to.
There are podcasts devoted to talking about all things royal family. And yes, I listened to them, and yes, I'm a nerd. So yes,
we knew that.
The thing I loved about this, it was just so modern and fresh. I could do a whole thing on, like, Meghan and how the royal family and changes and coincidences and ironies, and, like, there's so many nuances.
Yeah.
Just go find out for yourself because there's so much to it.
I think one of my other favorite moments was that Meghan adopted a dog. Has an adopted dog. It's not a corgi. I
think it's a beagle.
It's a beagle, I think. Yeah, that sounds right. And the dog rode to the royal wedding in the Queen's car with the Queen.
Oh.
Which was just delightful.
The Queen. She's great. All right,
now moving on.
Okay, so the first thing we have on our list is tariffs and the little tit-for-tat trade war that's brewing between the U.S. and you wouldn't have guessed, our closest allies.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I don't know if you remember, like, I don't know if we even talked about it, like, a month and a half, 2 months ago. So we decided to levy sanctions on steel and aluminum. And this was going to impact China and a couple of our, like, not our allies. They're not our enemies, but they're not our allies when it comes to trade. But it also would have impacted Europe, a lot of Europe, and Canada and Mexico. And at the time, Donald Trump issued waivers so that we would those wouldn't affect our trade relationships with Europe, Canada, and Mexico. But at the beginning of this week, Trump decided to let those waivers lapse, and now those tariffs on aluminum and steel are levied on Europe and Canada and Mexico. And the reason that
the EU.
And the EU. Europe.
Oh.
EU. Most of Europe is the EU.
Sorry.
No, you're good. But the thing about this is that we get our major sources of steel and aluminum, like, they come from Europe. And the rationale that Trump used on this to levy these sanctions was for national security reasons, which is like the worst excuse ever. Like, Canada's foreign minister.
Can I just say that the mere claim that Canada is a national security threat to the United States is absolutely ridiculous.
I want to read Canada's statement about this because it was so funny. So Canada,
so ridiculous.
Before these sanctions were official, like, there were a lot of rumors about them. So Canada says, so this is the Canadian Foreign Minister, Chrystia Freeland. She said, Canada considers it frankly absurd that we would in any way be considered to be a national security threat to the United States. And, like, that sums it up.
That does sums it up. The fact that we're levying tariffs on our allies on national security grounds is stupid.
It's really, yeah, and it's
stupid.
It's
like,
ridiculous.
Can I just say, I could do a whole soapbox on this. I will do a mini one. At a time when we, at this crucial juncture in international relations, we need our allies more than ever, especially with North Korea and curbing the threat from Russia and China and Iran. Like, there are so many things, and the fact that we're angering our allies with stupid tariffs is annoying.
Yeah.
Like, it is the absolute worst thing we could do right now to our allies, because we need them.
Yeah. And Trump is all about bringing jobs back here, but the problem is that, like, the steel industry in the U.S., they're going to see a benefit, but it's a really small industry. And so, like, the people who buy steel, especially imported steel, are going to be a lot harder hit by this because prices for steel are going to go way up. And in addition, Europe is levying sanctions against us on things like, they had talked about peanut butter. They had talked about a couple other things. They talked about whiskey and Harley Davidson's. Was it whiskey? Bourbon. The one from, and
Kentucky.
those ones, the ones from Kentucky, and then the Harley Davidsons from Wisconsin, because those hit at two, like, Trump allies, right? They hit at McConnell and Ryan's home districts. But right now, also, the G7 is meeting in Quebec, I think.
Yes.
And so this is going to make relationships, the G7 is, like, the 7 biggest economies in the world, so that includes a lot of our allies, like Germany and France and Canada and China and, like, all
not China.
Not China, sorry. They're not. It was the biggest economies in the world, and then, that's why China is not included. And a couple, like, it's, there's going to be some cold shouldering.
And before Trump left for the G7, both Justin Trudeau and Emmanuel Macron were, like, pretty much, like, trash talking Trump before, like, they usually release, like, a final statement. It's called a communique at the end.
Yeah.
And it's like, they all agree on the language and blah, blah, blah. And Macron was basically like, if Trump doesn't want to sign it, we're fine doing it without him.
Yeah.
And, like, they were really ramping up this pressure. And Trump, from, like, all the accounts and reporters that I saw, like, Trump did not want to go to this summit. Like, he generally did not want to go. And he's leaving early. So he's only going to be there for probably, like, 24 hours. He's leaving Saturday early to go to Singapore. But, like, what a baby! Like, you can't handle, like, some tough talk from your friends, like...
When you're doing stupid things.
Yeah, it's just, like, what a loser. Like,
yeah,
you can't handle the criticism, so you just leave the party early, like...
Yeah. Well, and, like, beyond that, the thing that, like, that really gets me is that this week, Trump took pressure off of ZTE, which is a Chinese phone company that is actually actively spying on the United States.
Which is also stupid.
And so, like...
Like, why is he worried about Chinese jobs when he's supposed to be worried about American jobs?
I don't know. It's,
like,
I don't know.
It just seems so off-brand for Trump to, like, go out of his way to worry about this Chinese company and to, like, rescue them because they were, like, what was his reasoning? Because they were treated badly or something?
Well, and he did the treating badly, too. So, yeah, that was his... Yeah. Anyway, it's, like, that's really the insult to injury, though, to these European... Like, to our allies, is that he's going out of his way to make sure that ZTE gets the least, like, pressure possible on them.
It's just... It's dumb.
Yeah, it really is. So, that was the first big category.
Oh, man. Okay. Next is North Korea. And...
Oh, my gosh.
If you probably know, Trump and Kim Jong-un are supposed to have a summit on this coming Tuesday in Singapore.
June 12th, right.
But there's been a lot of back and forth.
Lots of it.
Basically, to sum it up, it was on, then John Bolton came out and said some things.
And then Mike Pence reiterated
and then North Korea, like, said some really bad things about them. It was like, okay.
Trump said a letter.
But then Trump pulled out.
Yeah.
Trump canceled the meeting. Everyone was like, what? But then, like, a representative from North Korea came and visited New York and Washington and delivered, like, this huge envelope and that said some really nice things. And then Trump said, okay, it's back on.
Yeah. Okay, that's the gist of it. All right, now the specifics. So John Bolton is the worst. He is the worst. He is actually... he has never wanted this. He's never wanted to be in on these talks. He's actually been banned from the talks. I don't know about the final talks, but he hasn't been able to be in the room for some of the preliminary stuff because he, like, North Korea hates him from his time in previous administrations. You're not regimes, so we're not regimes.
We're not a regime.
Anyway, so he was like, North Korea better get involved in this deal because otherwise they're going to have the Libya example. And literally every nuclear historian was like, never bring up the Libya example. Or say that it's possible that some other country could become a Libya. So, backstory. What is Libya? The Libya example. So Muammar Gaddafi is the leader of Libya, and he has a pretty close to functional nuclear weapons program. I think they had like a couple of missiles. And he saw what happened in Iraq when the United States went in there. That's the other country you don't bring up when you're talking about nuclear stuff, okay? Because they stopped their nuclear program, and then Saddam Hussein was taken out by the Americans. So Muammar Gaddafi saw what was going on in Iraq and was like, well, I don't want to be invaded by the Americans. So he went to it was the UN, and he just said, like, look, you can take all of our fissile material and all of our bombs and just, like, you can take it out on your plane, and in return we want to be in the UN, and we want to be able to have these decisions and be supported by you, and we'll play nice. Okay, so they did that. Like, we literally, the British and the United States flew in planes, took out all of the fissile material, all of the nuclear material, and all of the anything that could be transformed into nuclear bomb, and just flew it out of there. A couple of years later, fast forward, Arab Spring happens, and Libya, the people in Libya rise up against Muammar Gaddafi, and they, like, basically he goes into exile, and then they find him, and they do terrible things to him. Like, it's not a pretty sight, and his people do that in the streets, and it's totally... and they pretty much end up killing him, but before that, they do a lot of terrible things, like torturing and all that good stuff. So that's the Libya example. Like, because, and the lesson that a lot of people, especially people like Kim Jong-un, take out of that is that because Gaddafi gave up his nuclear weapons, and didn't get, like, hard assurances from the United States that we'd get involved, because the United States and allies didn't get involved in Libya and didn't try to, like, protect Muammar Gaddafi, like, because he gave up his nuclear weapons, he didn't have this guarantee of power in order to keep himself from ending in a really gruesome death, right? Okay, so that's the Libya example. So John Bolton opens his big wide mouth, sticks his foot in and halfway down his throat, and is like, so if they don't do anything, then they're gonna be a Libya, and that's just too bad. So then Pence, like, just does it some more, and he's like, yeah, they're gonna be a Libya, and reiterates this point. And then North Korean experts say some terrible things about Pence because he's saying dumb things, and this all leads to the letter that Trump sends to North Korea via encrypted email, and that says basically like my guns are bigger than your guns, but we're really sorry that you're saying all these terrible things because we really did want this, and blah 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 blah. It's this, like, really poorly written letter, but it gets the point across, and the last line is basically something like, if you want to talk, we're still here, we'd love to talk,
call me anytime.
So, and I think that Trump, like, was personally involved in the drafting of that letter. So then the North Koreans are like, you know, we want to do this. And so it's back on again, like 2 or 3 days later. It's ridiculous how fast this all happened. And like Stu said, an actual North Korean official, like number 2 official, he's, like, pretty high up there. He came to visit New York, and in order to do that, like, we had to lift some personal sanctions against him because he's involved in some things that we had, like, literally his name was on the sanctions. Like, it was personal sanctions, and so he wasn't actually allowed in the country, but we made an exception. And now, right after Trump leaves the G7, he's headed to North Korea to work out some stuff and with North Korea and to actually meet them face to face. So it's busy. So we'll see what happens on Tuesday. The other thing that you sent me, do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, so Trump was asked at like a pool spray or something.
Was it when he was meeting?
I think it was with Prime Minister Shinzo Abe of Japan.
Yeah, he came to visit.
In advance of the Singapore summit, and
because Japan is feeling left out. Like, they're the ones who have been underneath the missiles that North Korea has been testing, and so they're like, excuse us, we want to be involved. So Shinzo Abe met with Trump. Go on.
And Trump was asked like what he's doing to prepare. I should get the exact wording. Trump said, quote, "I don't think I have to prepare very much. It's about attitude."
I saw that.
And everyone was like, what?
Excuse you?
So, and then Secretary of State Pompeo said he has been briefing Trump every day. So, like, he probably has been preparing, but I think just the attitude of Trump, like, I don't need to prepare. Like, it's all about attitude.
Yeah.
And it's like, I heard someone on TV said this, I can't remember who, but they were like, Trump is just expecting to go in, slap the table, and make a deal like it's some Manhattan real estate deal. And, like, that's not how it works in international diplomacy. Nope. And so the fact that he's just, thinking he can do it all on his own is very upsetting and very concerning. Mm-hmm. But going to the summit, our Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who's really taken the lead on negotiations and with the North Korea
as it should be.
As it should be. He's the Secretary of State. That's totally in his purview. And so it's great, and I applaud that he's so involved in the process. Yeah. He's the only one in the administration who's even met Kim Jong-un before, twice even. So like, he has a lot of good experience in that area. John Bolton is also going, National Security Advisor.
But it'll be interesting to see what role he plays, because he really, the North Koreans hate him a lot.
Also, Chief of Staff John Kelly is also going. But Ivanka and Jared aren't coming. Like, nobody like that.
Yeah.
So they're really keeping a trim profile. But
so
Pompeo is really taking the lead on this issue.
So the thing that'll be interesting is that, like, really the outcome that can come out of this is, like, if a summit like this were going to happen in any other administration, a summit wouldn't happen until all of the groundwork had been done. And it takes a long time to get that groundwork done and to, because you do all of the negotiating for a deal before you get there with the leaders. And because if you were to have the leaders in the room together, like, they would have because they're the face of the country, like, you risk them losing face with each other and with the world. And so everything is done by the second the second track of diplomacy, which is, like, all of the ministers meeting together and all of that. And, like, because of the uncertainty of whether or not the summit was actually going to happen and how quick it's been, there hasn't been a lot of time for a deal to be pulled together, and we still don't know if we agree on the same definition of denuclearization.
That's true.
Like,
that's concerning.
There are multiple, like, a win for Trump out of this is something, anything. He can spin it to his base in any, like, if he just meeting with Kim Jong-un and getting some, like, concession from him, Trump will be able to spin it to his base. But the rest of us are going to be sitting here like, there was no point to that. It did nothing. We're actually no closer to safety. And for Kim Jong-un, really, like, getting the leader of America to meet with him and to have that picture of him shaking hands, that's going to do that. He's going to come out of this just fine, even if there's never a deal. And so, like, right now, a win for the world is not going to happen. It's going to be personal wins for Trump and his political parties, and for Kim Jong-un and his country. Like, there's no way that, like, actually international security wins in this circumstance.
So we will see. So Trump is currently at the G7 in Canada, and he's flying directly from there to Singapore in preparation for the summit. It's supposed to take place on Tuesday.
Yep.
At a swanky resort hotel in Singapore.
Yeah.
So we will be very curious to see what happens and watch how it goes. This is so unprecedented and so who would have thought a year ago that this would happen? Nobody would have thought that.
It'll be the first time that the leaders of North Korea and the United States have met in a really long time. I'm trying to remember if ever. I can't remember if Kim
the
Il-sung...
president of the United... I don't think a U.S. president has ever met the North Korea. There's been,
I don't think so
secretaries
either.
of state and, lower level officials.
Yeah, but I don't remember. I can't remember if somebody met with Kim Il-sung, but I don't think so. Did Bill Clinton... No, they called off the meeting.
No, so... Madeleine Albright, as Secretary of State, went to Pyongyang.
Oh, that's what it was.
And met with Kim Jong-il.
Right.
I don't think anyone met with Kim Il-sung.
That would make sense.
US. So Madeleine Albright and Mike Pompeo are the highest level to have met until this summit.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Next big thing. Everybody stretch. Because this is, we're halfway through.
From one nuclear country to another.
Yeah. Okay, so Trump finally did the thing that everybody, literally has been my nightmare for so long that, I'm just living in my nightmare now. He officially withdrew from the Iran nuclear deal. There's not... Okay, so here's the thing. You can't actually withdraw. You can just stop abiding by it. So Trump said we're no longer going to abide by it because... of reasons that are actually the worst. And so Iran immediately was like, guess what? If you're not going to abide by it, then we're going to start really ramping up our development of nuclear capabilities. Because they have the ability for nuclear power and stuff like that, but they just aren't, they're not really working on the weapons program. And they said, okay, we're going to do it if you back out of this. Yeah. The European countries and the other people who are party to this deal are trying to come to terms with it. They're trying to keep it intact, the agreement intact. But the problem is that the United States is also talking sanctions on Iran, and the way that they would go about doing those sanctions would be sanctioning companies in Europe, in Asia, in the Middle East that have trade deals with.
Once again, punishing our allies, which is stupid.
Yeah. So anyway, this has been my nightmare for a really long time. It's now happened, and I just every time I think about it, there are a lot of things that I think that we can bounce back from and that we can solve once Trump leaves office, and that we can come around to fixing things or coming back to what we believe is a sense of normal or a new normal. But this is one thing that we can't fix. We can't just we want to be back in this agreement, right? We can't fix this.
And pretty much everybody internationally was telling Trump not to pull out of this deal.
Everyone. Emmanuel Macron came here to talk him out of it.
Angela Merkel also came to DC.
He's not a huge fan of Angela Merkel.
Theresa May, everybody.
Everybody was trying to talk him out of it. And this is also, it's spiraling... Okay, the other thing that this is doing is in Iran, it's... So Hassan Rouhani, who is a moderate president of Iran, this was his big accomplishment, and he barely won re-election when they held elections last year. And he's not crazy like the previous prime minister, and he's not one who's going to be super aggressive. But there are conservatives there are people who are trying to take back the presidency, because obviously this moderation, this willingness to work with outside countries backfired, and now we're going to see these sanctions again that totally crippled the Iranian economy and left a lot of our people starving. It was very terrible when the heaviest sanctions were placed on Iran. So it's the worst thing. I hate it so much. So
same. I don't like it either.
No.
Okay, next thing on our list. Let's come a little bit more domestic here.
Okay.
And let's talk about pardons.
Oh.
So, Trump, first of all, has been on a huge clemency.
Yeah, he found a new toy. Somebody described it today as a new toy.
Yeah.
That he's playing with.
Ooh, let's check this out.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about some interesting things. So, Trump got a visit recently at the White House from Kim Kardashian West, which...
She's a reality TV star.
She's... Kate,
Married
here's
to
the
a
thing about
rapper.
the Kardashians, is they're famous for being famous. Like, they're not anybody.
Yeah.
Like, they're just famous because they're famous. Like, nobody can tell you why they're famous. They just are.
They just are.
And so that's weird. So, like, I don't know why Trump was meeting with her, but I think she had a valid cause. Like, I agree with her cause.
She did have a really great cause.
She was lobbying, and she has been for a while, for pardon of a woman named Alice Marie Johnson. She's an African-American woman who got, like, I don't even know how many years.
It was basically life in prison for her.
Basically life in prison on a first offense drug charge.
Yeah.
Like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So everyone was like, yeah, that sounds a little unfair.
That's a little harsh.
But then Trump ended up commuting her sentence after Kim Kardashian left. And everyone was like, okay.
That's fine, I guess.
That's fine. Like, she's a good woman. She has a deserving case. But, like, if you don't have a celebrity arguing for your case, you're not going to get it. Because Trump also pardoned the boxer posthumously, Jack Johnson. Why? Because Sylvester Stallone was at the White House and lobbying for it. So it brings up the fact, like, where is Trump's vetting? Is it because you're a celebrity and you say, oh, pardon this person? Trump's like, okay.
There's two kinds of pardons, too. There's the celebrity-endorsed pardons that he's undertaking, so, like, Jack Johnson and Alice Marie Johnson. And there's the, I don't like the person who prosecuted you pardons. So this happened to Dinesh D'Souza. There's another one he's looking at. Martha Stewart he's looking at.
Why Martha Stewart? Like
that one was prosecuted by James Comey.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Like,
so that's kind of part of it. But, like, he's also, like, kind of, like, people I don't like, he's kind of setting a precedent that, like, if I don't like your prosecutor or your prosecutor argues against me, because one of them was prosecuted that he's talking about was prosecuted by the Preet Bharara. The New York state attorney, the previous state attorney. Anyway, so there are a lot of things going on that, like, there are these two different pardons. The other thing about the Alice Marie Johnson thing is that Trump has instructed his Justice Department to, like, pursue the harshest possible sentences for drug offenses so that, like, as, like, an incentive to stop the war on drugs, which, like, honestly, watch any drug documentary. Like, the way that doing stuff with, like, prison time is not going to stop anything. Like, in any, it makes it worse. There are other programs and there are other ways to fix the problem, not that. Anyway, so there are two types of pardons in that way. And the second type of pardon, the kind where he doesn't like your prosecutor or he's like, or the crime, because Dinesh D'Souza, who was pardoned earlier this week, who I just, like, as a person and his ideas, like, I just have a lot of, like, he's not a good person. Anyway, so he, like, admitted in court to election fraud. Like, he personally donated to a campaign far more than the acceptable amount. Like, far more. Knowingly did it. Admitted to it in court, received time, is out now, campaigns for Trump. Okay, so Trump knows his name because, like, he's a big Trump supporter. And he says some, like, he's like a Trump person in that he says a lot of inflammatory things that are verging on lots of terrible things, like verging on misogynistic, and, like, he says a lot of bad things when it comes to, like, guns and how, like, he was the one who said that the Parkland kids, when the Florida, do you remember when the Florida State Senate, like, struck down the gun ban and they were all sitting in the balcony gallery crying, and he was the one who tweeted, like, worst thing that's happened to them since their parents made them get a summer job, right? Like, that's Dinesh D'Souza. And so he pardoned him, and then he's talking about a couple others, and, like, basically what people are saying is that Trump is setting himself up to be able to pardon people who are indicted by Mueller and who are prosecuted by Mueller, including possibly himself, which happened this week when we saw a memo that was published by the New York Times that was sent to the Mueller team by Trump's lawyers, basically making the case that Trump could pardon himself were it come to that. And then, well, it kind of skirted around that point, and then Trump basically said, like...
Then he tweeted, "I have the absolute right to pardon myself." And everyone was like, what?
Right, and I was listening to a bunch of lawyers debate this on one of the podcasts I listened to, and they were saying that, like, we have no idea.
It's not cut and dry yet. There's debate among legal scholars, like, if it's constitutionally allowable for a president to pardon himself.
Well, and
there's no consensus among legal scholars.
And there's no precedent either. No. Somebody, like, one of the lawyers I was listening to was joking that, like, the only precedent we have is that Grover Cleveland pardoned himself for jaywalking one time. Like, that's the precedent.
Really?
Yeah, it was just, like, a joke. He, like... I jaywalked, but I pardoned myself kind of thing, you know, like, but it wasn't like an official pardon, and it was a joke. So there's no, anyway, so that was the big thing that Trump did this week, that everybody was like, what? You want to run that by us again? This also comes, so that happened at the beginning of the week. At the end of the week, there were a lot of new things coming out from the Mueller probe. So it came out that Paul Manafort, who has already been indicted and already, he's
in deep trouble.
Yeah, he's in deep trouble because he was reaching out and communicating with people, and he
came out that he was witness tampering. They accused him of witness tampering.
So then today he was like, there were a couple more charges levied against him and a business partner, and so like there's still stuff coming out, and I was reading somewhere recently that like when it has come to other special prosecutors on probes like this, like it took a long time, and there weren't indictments this quickly in any other probes, and Mueller's taking his time too. So like this isn't nothing. This isn't a nothing burger like the Trump administration wants you to believe. This is there is something to this. It may not be that like Trump actually did something terrible, but like looking into his team and looking into all of the Russian involvement in our elections and all of that kind of thing, like there's stuff there, and the Mueller team is probably just getting started from what we can tell. I mean, they don't say anything ever. But.
No. All right, last thing on our list is the one and only Rudy Giuliani. Now, the reason I bring this up, what? Oh, yeah, I think I'm going to talk. Let's see.
We have two things that we were like, maybe we'll talk about this.
So let me say what I'll say and see if it covers what you were thinking of. So, two things on Rudy Giuliani. Basically, the overarching goal or theme with Rudy Giuliani lately is everyone's like, who is he speaking for? Like, does he speak for the administration? Does he speak for the president? Or does he speak for Trump? And so everyone's confused. Two things. First, on Melania Trump. Okay, first of all, Rudy Giuliani was at a conference in Israel making all of these comments. And everyone was like, why is Giuliani in Israel? Anyways, side note, I don't know why he was in Israel. But he said these at a conference in Israel, which, once again, is weird. He said that Melania believes Trump's... Melania believes Donald Trump when he says he didn't have an affair with Stormy Daniels. Rudy Giuliani said that.
Okay.
And then Melania Trump's spokeswoman came out and said, I don't believe Mrs. Trump has ever stated her opinion to Mr. Giuliani. Like, bam! Clap back! Like, wow. So we know that Giuliani does not speak for the First Lady.
Yeah.
Then Giuliani waded into foreign affairs when he said that Kim Jong-un was on his hands and knees begging to have the summit back on. And everyone was like, what? And then Secretary of State Pompeo said Rudy Giuliani does not speak for the administration on these on this issue. Like, bam, bam! Like, you tell him. So basically, Rudy Giuliani does not speak for the administration on foreign affairs, which he shouldn't.
He shouldn't.
Because he's not the Secretary of State. And he does not speak to the First Lady, which he shouldn't either, because he doesn't represent
her. Well, and the other thing is that, like, since Rudy Giuliani has joined the president's legal team, because he's joined, like, his personal legal team for the Russia probe, he's said some things that, like, have put the administration in hot water. Like, a lot of, like, I can't think of things now, but it's been multiple things. And you're like...
He's been more helpful than
he's been more harmful.
Hurtful than helpful.
Yeah, he's been saying things that, like, have opened up new alleyways for investigation and brought new things to light that we were like, didn't know that was a thing, and that's terrible. Like, he's actually doing more against the administration than for it. So, yeah.
So why he's still there, nobody knows.
I don't know.
Anyways, that wraps up our politics section. Now we will go to our soapbox, which I can't speak, which is a little bit more somber this week.
Yeah, it is.
So this week has been a really bad week for suicides.
Like, really
there have been 2 high-profile suicide deaths this week. Fashion designer Kate Spade and celebrity chef Anthony Bourdain. Also, the CDC this week released a report saying that suicide rates are on the rise.
Yeah.
And so basically those 3 things, it's like this week I've been like, oh my gosh, like suicide, like what is going on? And for some reason, suicide is one of those things that I just feel strongly about, and I don't know why, but it's just one of those things I feel like I need to advocate for and like have be my cause. Just because it's so, I don't even know how to explain it. It's so sad. It's so depressing, and it just makes me sad that like we have all the suicide news going on.
And the thing is too, like you may not realize, like, it's not always mental. It's not always because like you said something mean to them or whatever. It's mental illness is a really big struggle, and it's really hard for people to realize that they're in the midst of that and to pull themselves out unless somebody reaches out to them or like they get the help they need. And sometimes they are getting the help they need and they still take their own lives because they feel like they can do nothing more. And so it's just like really important to like make sure that you know you're okay, and make sure that you're self-evaluating, and the people around you too. It's okay to say something like, hey, are you doing okay? Is there anything I can do to help you? And to share some of the resources that are out there. My friend works for the Crisis Text Line, which is a really great opportunity for introverts who, like, if you don't feel like talking to someone, because there's also the Crisis Hotline, which you can call in and talk to, and I'll put both the numbers in the blog post and say them here, but my friend works for the Crisis Hotline, and it's like if you just feel like texting with someone and you don't want to burden one of your friends, because sometimes people who have depression and anxiety don't want to put their burdens on people that they love and care about because they don't want to see them struggle with the same things, and that's understandable and perfectly okay. But you do need to talk to someone, and the Crisis Text Line is there for you with people who have been trained to help you. So you just have to text START to 741-741, and they'll text you and help you, and that's the Crisis Text Line. And then the Crisis Hotline is 1-800-273-8255. Please use those resources and find yourself things that will help you. Because suicide is taking more lives than murder in a lot of ways, like, according to numbers.
Suicide,
and it's a big problem in Utah.
Yes, it is a big problem in Utah, which is so sad. I think I read with that report from the CDC that suicide is now the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. Isn't that sad? So basically our soapbox today is just get help, because help is available.
Yep. And we care for you, and we want you here.
No matter what form, whether it be through the hotlines, through friends, through mental health professionals, through a church leader, like wherever you feel comfortable, get help.
Yeah.
Because it's out there.
Mm-hmm. So on that
beautiful note.
We love you. We want you here. Thanks for listening.
Bye-bye.
We'll see you later.